I pressed my back against the elevator wall, breath hitching as his hands found my waist. The confined space hummed with electricity, our bodies barely inches apart. His eyes searched mine, dark with intention, and I knew we'd crossed a line. We couldn't uncross. The elevator had stopped moving 20 minutes ago, but neither of us cared anymore. His thumb traced my jaw, sending heat spiraling through me. "We shouldn't," I whispered even as I leaned into his touch. His lips curved into a knowing smile. "But we will." The space between us vanished as he pulled me closer, his mouth finding mine in the dim emergency lighting. Every rational thought scattered as his hands explored, claiming, discovering. I arched against him, surrendering to the moment, to him, to whatever this was becoming. Enjoying the start? Hit that like button, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what's got you hooked so far. The day had started like any other Tuesday. I'd been working late again, perfecting a logo design that refused to cooperate with my vision. The office building was nearly empty by the time I finally packed up, the familiar hum of fluorescent lights my only company. I stepped into the elevator on the 32nd floor, exhausted, but satisfied with the progress I'd made. The doors were almost closed when a hand shot through, stopping them. He stepped in, all sharp suits and confident energy, the kind of man who commanded attention without trying. I'd seen him around the building before, always impeccably dressed, always focused, always seemingly in control of whatever room he entered. Tonight, though, something felt different. Maybe it was the way his tie hung loose around his neck, or how he ran a hand through his dark hair, disrupting its usual perfect style. "Long day?" he asked, his voice carrying that hint of exhaustion that made him seem more human, more approachable. I nodded, suddenly aware of how close we were standing in the small space. "You could say that. I'm Zoe, by the way. I work on the 32nd floor." "Lucas," he replied, extending his hand. When our fingers touched, a spark shot through me that had nothing to do with static electricity. 28th floor, corporate law. Of course he was a lawyer. Everything about him screamed confidence and control, from his perfectly tailored suit to the way he carried himself. But there was something else underneath, something I couldn't quite identify. The elevator began its descent, and for a moment, comfortable silence settled between us. Then, with a jarring jolt and a grinding sound that made my stomach drop, we stopped. The lights flickered once, twice, then dimmed to the emergency lighting. "That's not good," Lucas muttered, immediately pressing the emergency button. Nothing happened. He tried the floor buttons, the door open button, even giving the panel a firm tap. Still nothing. I pulled out my phone. No signal. The reality of our situation began to sink in. "How long do you think?" "Could be hours," he said, loosening his tie completely. "The building's old. These things happen. Hours. Trapped in this small space with a man who made my pulse quicken just by existing." I leaned against the wall, trying to process this turn of events. Lucas had removed his jacket, draping it over the handrail, and I couldn't help but notice how his dress shirt clung to his frame, how the rolled sleeves revealed strong forearms. "So," I said, attempting to fill the silence, "corporate law. That sounds intense." He chuckled, the sound low and warm in the confined space. "It has its moments. What about you? Graphic design?" "How did you—" "I've noticed you around. You always look focused, creative. Plus, you're usually carrying that oversized portfolio bag." The fact that he'd noticed me sent a flutter through my chest. "You're observant. It's part of the job." His eyes met mine, and I saw something shift in his expression. But with you, it wasn't professional observation. The air between us suddenly felt charged, electric. I found myself studying his face in the dim lighting, the sharp line of his jaw, the way his eyes seemed to hold secrets, the slight smile playing at his lips. "What kind of observation was it then?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He stepped closer, just a fraction, but enough that I could catch the faint scent of his cologne mixed with something uniquely him. The kind where a man notices a beautiful woman and wonders what her laugh sounds like, what she thinks about when she's staring out the window during her coffee break. My breath caught. "You've been watching me during my coffee breaks?" "Only when I'm lucky enough to be in the lobby at the right time." His honesty was disarming, vulnerable in a way I hadn't expected from someone who carried himself with such confidence. The elevator felt smaller now, the air thicker. I was acutely aware of every breath, every slight movement he made. When he raised his hand to brush a strand of hair from my face, I didn't pull away. "Zoe," he said my name like he was tasting it, savoring it. "Tell me to stop, and I will." Instead of words, I leaned into his touch. His palm was warm against my cheek, his thumb tracing a gentle path along my skin. The professional distance we'd maintained for months dissolved completely. His lips met mine slowly, tentatively at first, as if he was still giving me a chance to change my mind. But the moment our mouths connected, something ignited between us. The kiss deepened, his hands finding my waist, pulling me closer until there was no space left between us. I'd never been one for spontaneous encounters, but something about Lucas, about this moment, made all my usual caution evaporate. My hands found the buttons of his shirt, working them open with trembling fingers while his mouth traced a path along my neck. "You're sure about this?" he asked against my skin, his voice rough with desire, but still tinged with that careful consideration that made my heart race even faster. "More sure than I've been about anything in a long time," I breathed, surprised by my own boldness. His hands slipped beneath my blouse, palms warm against my skin, mapping every curve with reverent attention. I gasped as he found sensitive spots I didn't even know existed, his touch both gentle and confident. The contrast between his controlled exterior and the passion I could feel building in him was intoxicating. The emergency lighting cast everything in shadow and gold, making the moment feel dreamlike, suspended from reality. His shirt hung open, now revealing the solid strength of his chest, and I couldn't resist running my hands over the smooth expanse of skin. "You're incredible," he murmured, his lips finding that spot just below my ear that made me shiver. His hands worked at the buttons of my blouse with surprising dexterity, each newly exposed inch of skin receiving devoted attention from his mouth. When the fabric fell away completely, he stepped back just enough to look at me, his eyes dark, with appreciation and something deeper. "Beautiful," he breathed, and the reverence in his voice made me feel like the most desired woman in the world. I reached for him, needing to feel his skin against mine, needing to explore the body that had haunted my peripheral vision for months. He was all lean muscle and controlled strength, and when I traced my fingers along his chest, I felt his sharp intake of breath, saw the way his control wavered. His hands found the curve of my waist, lifting me effortlessly until I was pressed against the elevator wall, my legs wrapped around him. The position brought us into perfect alignment, and the heat between us intensified to an almost unbearable degree. "Lucas," I whispered his name like a prayer, like a plea. He captured my mouth again, this kiss hungrier, more desperate than the first. I could taste his need, feel it in the way his hands gripped my thighs, in the tremor that ran through his body when I rolled my hips against him. Time seemed suspended as we explored each other with growing urgency. His mouth traced patterns across my collarbone, found the sensitive skin at the base of my throat, drew soft gasps from my lips that echoed in the small space. Every touch sent electricity coursing through me, building to something I could barely contain. My fingers worked at his belt, and I felt him tense with anticipation. When I finally freed him, taking him in my hand, he groaned against my neck, the sound raw and unguarded. He was impressive, thick and warm in my palm, and I could feel his pulse racing beneath the smooth skin. "Wait," he said, his voice strained. "I want to take care of you first." Before I could protest, he was sinking to his knees, his hands sliding up my thighs, pushing my skirt higher. The reverent way he looked at me, like I was something precious, something to be worshipped, made my knees weak. His mouth found the sensitive skin of my inner thighs, pressing soft kisses that made me tremble. When he finally reached the center of my desire, his touch was gentle but sure, his tongue finding exactly the right rhythm to make me cry out. The sensations were overwhelming, building to a crescendo that had me gripping his shoulders, my head thrown back against the elevator wall. He didn't stop, didn't let up, until I was shaking with the force of my release, his name falling from my lips like a benediction. When he stood, his eyes were dark with need, his breathing as ragged as mine. I reached for him, my hands still, trembling, and guided him to me. The feel of him sliding into me was perfect, complete, like we'd been made to fit together exactly this way. We moved together in the dim lighting, finding a rhythm that was both urgent and tender. Every thrust sent waves of pleasure through me. Every whispered endearment made my heart race faster. He filled me completely, stretching me in the most delicious way, and I could feel myself building toward another peak. "You feel so good," he breathed against my ear, his voice rough with emotion. So perfect. His words pushed me over the edge again, my body clenching around him as another wave of ecstasy crashed over me. I felt him tense, heard his sharp intake of breath. And then he was following me into bliss, his body shuddering against mine as he found his own release. We stayed pressed together for long moments afterward, our breathing slowly returning to normal, the reality of what had just happened, settling over us. I expected awkwardness, regret, but instead I felt a deep satisfaction, a rightness that surprised me. "That was," he began, then trailed off, seeming to search for words. "Unexpected," I finished with a soft laugh. "The best kind of unexpected," he agreed, pressing a gentle kiss to my temple. We slowly disentangled ourselves, straightening our clothes with hands that still trembled slightly. The elevator remained stubbornly motionless, but somehow I didn't mind anymore. Being trapped here with Lucas had become less of a problem and more of a gift. "So," I said, attempting to regain some semblance of normalcy. "What now?" He was rebuttoning his shirt, but he paused to look at me. "Now we wait for rescue, I suppose. Though I have to admit, I'm not as eager for it as I was an hour ago." The honesty in his admission made warmth bloom in my chest. "Lucas, I don't usually—" "Neither do I," he interrupted gently. "But something about you, about this situation, I couldn't help myself." Before I could respond, a grinding sound filled the elevator shaft, followed by a gentle jolt. The lights flickered back to full brightness, and suddenly we were moving again. "Well," Lucas said with a rueful smile, "rescued whether we wanted it or not." The elevator opened on the ground floor to reveal 2 maintenance workers and a security guard. "You folks okay?" one of them asked. "We've been working to get you out for the past 2 hours. 2 hours. It had felt like both a lifetime and an instant. "We're fine," I managed, my voice steadier than I felt. "Thank you for getting us out." As we walked through the lobby together, I wondered if this would be it. A single, incredible encounter that we'd both remember but never speak of again. The thought left me feeling hollow. "Zoe," Lucas said as we reached the building entrance, "would you like to get dinner sometime? Somewhere with more reliable elevators?" The relief that flooded through me was almost overwhelming. "I'd like that very much." He smiled, the same confident expression I'd admired from afar. But now I knew the passionate man underneath that controlled exterior. "Tomorrow night?" "Tomorrow night," I agreed. As I walked to my car, I couldn't stop smiling. What had started as a routine Tuesday evening had become something extraordinary. Sometimes the best things in life happened when you least expected them, in the most unlikely places. The next evening, I found myself standing in front of my closet, trying to decide what to wear for my first official date with Lucas. It felt strange considering we'd already been more intimate than I'd been with some men I'd dated for months. But there was something exciting about doing things backward, about having the chance to learn about each other in more traditional ways after our explosive beginning. I settled on a simple black dress that made me feel confident without being too formal. When Lucas picked me up, punctual as I'd somehow known he would be, he was wearing dark jeans and a button-down shirt that made his eyes look even more compelling than they had in the elevator's emergency lighting. "You look beautiful," he said, offering me his arm with old-fashioned courtesy that made my heart flutter. Dinner was at a small Italian restaurant with dim lighting and intimate booths. As we talked, I discovered layers to Lucas that his professional demeanor had hidden. He was funny, with a dry sense of humor that caught me off guard. He was passionate about his work, but not consumed by it. He had strong opinions about everything from movies to politics, but he listened to mine with genuine interest. "I have to ask," I said over dessert, "was last night completely out of character for you?" He considered the question seriously, twirling his wine glass between his fingers. "Yes and no. I'm not usually impulsive, but I've been thinking about you for months. Maybe being trapped gave me the excuse I needed to act on feelings I'd been trying to ignore." Months? The idea that he'd noticed me, thought about me for that long was both thrilling and touching. "Since you started working in the building, you have this way of concentrating when you're working. You get this little crease between your eyebrows, and you bite your lower lip. I used to time my coffee breaks hoping to catch a glimpse of you." The confession made me warm all over. "I noticed you too. You always looked so serious, so important. I figured you were completely out of my league." "Out of your league?" He laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "Zoe, you're brilliant, talented, and more beautiful than you seem to realize. If anyone's out of anyone's league here, it's you being out of mine." The sincerity in his voice made my chest tight with emotion. When he walked me to my door that night, his kiss was soft, sweet, a promise of more to come. Over the following weeks, we fell into an easy rhythm. Lucas would stop by my floor after work, and we'd grab dinner or see a movie. Sometimes we'd just walk through the city, talking about everything and nothing. The physical chemistry we discovered in the elevator remained as strong as ever, but it was enhanced by genuine affection and growing intimacy. One evening, about a month after our elevator encounter, we were back in my apartment, curled up on the couch watching an old movie. Lucas had loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, and I was wearing one of his dress shirts over leggings, luxuriating in how it smelled like him. "Can I ask you something?" I said during a quiet moment in the film. "Anything." "Do you ever think about what would have happened if the elevator hadn't broken down that night?" He was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing patterns on my arm. "I think about it all the time. I probably would have kept admiring you from afar, too chicken to actually make a move. I would have convinced myself you were too good for me, that someone like you wouldn't be interested in someone like me." "Someone like you, Lucas? You're successful, intelligent, gorgeous, and completely out of practice with dating." he interrupted with a self-deprecating laugh. I've been so focused on my career that I'd forgotten how to connect with someone on a personal level. Being trapped with you that night stripped away all the professional pretense, all the careful distance I usually maintain. It forced me to be real. I turned in his arms so I could see his face. I'm glad it happened. Not just the physical part, though, that was incredible, but getting to know you, really know you. It's been amazing. His smile was soft, vulnerable in a way that made my heart ache with tenderness. I love you, Zoe. The words hung in the air between us, and I felt my breath catch. It was the first time either of us had said it, though I'd been feeling it for weeks. I love you too, I whispered, and his kiss tasted like relief and joy and promise. Later that night, as we lay tangled together in my bed, I marveled at how a simple elevator malfunction had completely changed my life. Lucas was everything I hadn't known I was looking for. Passionate yet gentle, strong yet vulnerable, confident yet humble enough to let me see his uncertainties. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, his voice sleepy and content. "Just this. Us. How sometimes the best things happen when you least expect them." He pressed a kiss to the top of my head. "I'm going to send a thank you card to that elevator maintenance company." I laughed, the sound muffled against his chest. "Think they'd believe us if we told them they were matchmakers? Probably not, but I know the truth." His arms tightened around me. "Sometimes you have to be willing to take a risk, to step outside your comfort zone." That elevator forced us into a situation where pretense was impossible, where we had to be real with each other. And look what happened. As I drifted off to sleep in his arms, I couldn't help but smile at the irony. I'd spent so much of my life planning, controlling, trying to predict outcomes. But the best thing that had ever happened to me came from a moment of complete unpredictability, from being trapped in a small space with the right person at exactly the right time. 6 months later, Lucas and I were living together in an apartment with a view of the city skyline. We'd kept our jobs in the same building, and every time we rode the elevator together, we shared secret smiles, remembering how it all began. The elevator had been fixed, of course, but sometimes I found myself hoping it might break down again, just for old time's sake. Though these days, I didn't need mechanical failures to find myself swept away by Lucas's passion. He'd become an expert at creating those moments of suspended time, those instances where the world fell away and there was nothing but us. One evening, as we were getting ready for a company party in the building's top-floor ballroom, I caught him watching me in the mirror as I put on my earrings. "What?" I asked, smiling at his reflection, just thinking about how different things could have been. If I'd taken the stairs that night, if you'd left 5 minutes earlier, if the elevator hadn't broken down. I turned to face him, straightening his bow tie with practiced ease. But it did break down, and here we are. "Here we are," he agreed, pulling me close for a kiss that tasted like forever. The party was elegant, filled with colleagues and clients I'd only seen in passing, but I barely noticed any of it. I was too busy being amazed by the man beside me, by how naturally we moved together, how he made me laugh, how he looked at me, like I was the only person in the room. As the evening wound down, we found ourselves alone on the balcony, looking out over the city lights. The same building where we'd met stretched below us, and I could see the windows of our respective floors glowing in the darkness. "Do you know what I was thinking about in the elevator that night?" Lucas said, his arms wrapped around me from behind. "Before or after we stopped talking and started not talking?" He laughed, the sound vibrating through his chest against my back. "Before. I was thinking about how tired I was of pretending not to notice you, how badly I wanted to know, what your voice sounded like when you weren't being professional, what you looked like when you laughed. And now you know. Now I know." His voice was soft, full of wonder. "And I never want to stop learning new things about you." I leaned back against him, feeling completely content. "So what's next for us?" "Everything," he said simply. "Everything we want." As we stood there under the stars, I thought about how life had a way of surprising you. How sometimes the most mundane moments, getting on an elevator after a long day, could become the catalyst for extraordinary change. How being forced to slow down, to be present with another person without distractions, could reveal connections you never knew existed. The elevator had brought us together, but it was our choice to stay together, to build something real and lasting from that initial spark. And as Lucas turned me in his arms for another kiss, I knew that whatever came next, we'd face it together, preferably in elevators that worked properly, but if not, we'd make the best of it. After all, some of the best stories begin with unexpected delays. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where being stuck somewhere led to something amazing? Would you have had the courage to take that leap, to let passion override caution in such a confined space? I'm genuinely curious about your thoughts. Drop them in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story of unexpected romance, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications because trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.